Man, I am so sick of this coronavirus garbage. I need some cheering up. You know what? Maybe I'll watch some stand-up comedy. They do say laughter is the best medicine after all. Alright, let's see here. Netflix. It's been a good year for comedy, so there's bound to be something good. Oh! Jerry Seinfeld has a new special. It's been a while. I can't hurt to watch, I guess. Let's check it out.
20 minutes later.
About my life, it just doesn't feel like it's going in the direction I want it to go. It's not that you're trapping in a hole with a box over it. It's beastly occasion to avail oneself of one of these portable plastic outdoor public toilets. That's a very different place than any other place you go in life. And you're a little different too when you come out. That's when the woman's tone of voice changes. Yes, the women are included in this too. Dog judgment. I'm gonna wait in the car. Leave the window open a crack so I can breathe.
Yeah, this isn't funny. Stand-up comedy is a competitive art form, and therefore each and every comedian has a responsibility to make themselves stand out from other comics within their own unique style. But I would argue that comedians should be conscious of adapting their style alongside their career and the environment. Ever since stand-up began, its format may have remained intact, but the things people were laughing at back in the 1960s is way different than the things we are currently laughing at now. Sure, there's comedy for grandma and grandpa, but then there's comedy for you and me. But I would argue that if a comedian is selling out to a large venue and filming a Netflix special as part of their latest tour, most would think that comedians given set would cater to a wide audience, but not always. So recently, Netflix has seen a lot of great new specials surface on its platform, and I would name a few reasons as to why so many good ones are dropping right now. But I couldn't help but notice something. First of all, Jerry Seinfeld finally released a new special for Netflix in late April, and that's something he only does every 10 to 20 years since he works so long on his material. But not only did Jerry Seinfeld release a special, Eric Andre finally came out with his own Netflix special too in late June. What shocked me after watching these two specials within mere months of each other was the stark contrast between these two comics. Sure, they have different styles and cater to different crowds, kinda like what I was trying to say about stand-up, but the contrast is just fascinating to me. With simply looking at style and targeting demographics, Eric Andre differs from a good amount of comics. But comics like Dave Chappelle and Mark Maron are still funny because they put themselves into their comedy, and their comedy is honest and encapsulates their stage personas. Even Patton Oswalt, goofy and nerdy as he is, can still get real on stage, and we've seen that before. But Jerry Seinfeld has failed to adapt his comedy to the modern scene, in my opinion. Especially considering what's going on in the world right now, it seems like Jerry just doesn't care and would rather be playing with his expensive cars and getting coffee instead of developing more honest material in his sets. But I don't think there's all that much to Jerry as a comic. Jerry Seinfeld arguably earned all his success from the 90s sitcom and made him the richest comedian in the world, having a net worth exceeding $900 million, and only remains relevant for that monetary success for the most part. I do enjoy the series, being that it was created and written mostly by comedic genius Larry David, but Seinfeld Jerry and real life Jerry are two completely different people in my eyes. Jerry is seriously my least favorite celebrity of all time, but I don't want to talk too much about my hatred for him in this video and will instead focus more on his public persona as it relates to Eric Andre's, using their two 2020 specials as case studies. If I ever feel compelled in the future, I may just have to make a separate video on why exactly I hate Jerry Seinfeld so much, but for now, I'll simply be critiquing his stand-up. Eric Andre, on the other hand, is one of my favorite comedians working today. So yeah, this video is a bit biased, but I'd still argue that Andre's work is just so much funnier and bolder than Jerry's clean comedy. Now, I understand that comedy is subjective, since everyone finds different things funny or not funny, so I want to stress that this video focuses more on the comparison between these two comics' approaches to the medium. Therefore, I won't be analyzing which jokes are funnier, and instead will zone in on my overall opinion of whose routine I enjoy more based on several factors. Alright, let's compare. Comedic style. What is Jerry's style, and why does it bother me so much? Ever since the comedian started to garner public attention, Seinfeld likes to focus on two things: observational comedy and clean comedy. So, for those who don't know, clean comedy refrains from throwing out any F-bombs and avoids graphic or suggestive subject matter. You know, the funny stuff. I can't stress enough how safe his material is, and it's always been this way. I was sort of hoping for a more honest set from Jerry this year, but instead we got a new special that might as well be a copy and paste from his specials in the mid-90s. This means you won't find any commentary on more pressing issues or cerebral topics. Instead, it's just jokes about doing laundry and airplane humor, all with that biting, high-pitched, annoying Jerry Seinfeld voice.
Up here hacking out another one of these!
This is exactly what can be found in his 2020 special, 23 Hours to Kill, a title that makes no sense in relation to his set subject matter, and it's simply used for the brief intro and skits promoting his new special. There's nothing different with the way he writes his material, fine, but his surface-level observational humor is just so outdated now that I may have laughed a total of 3 times, and if I did, it was typically one of these. One of the few other successful, clean comedians that gets attention today would be Brian Regan, a comic that I will just never find funny and caters strictly to families. It's interesting because Bill Burr even compares Jerry to Regan in a recent episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, Jerry's Netflix show. I will admit that he writes his jokes with some great precision, showing off his stylistic delivery patterns, but I wish he would talk about something other than Pop-Tarts or smartphones being bad. Other comics often say there's a dark underlying veneer behind Jerry's jokes, but I just don't ever see it. And the other thing that makes me hate his set so much is that we've all heard this stuff before. In terms of his subject matter, there's just nothing interesting or profound he has to say, and therefore it's just not funny. I would argue that a lot of his subject matter just fails to grab the attention of the modern viewer, seeing that his entire set maintains this one-note consistency, resulting in a pretty boring special in my opinion. Eric Andre differs in almost every way possible from Jerry, and it's all for the right reasons. Andre, being a significantly younger comedian than Jerry at 37 years old, tends to attract the younger fans of comedy like myself. I suppose virtually anyone could tune in and enjoy Adult Swim's Eric Andre show, but Andre's chaotic nature seems very in line with today's near nonsensical meme culture humor, so I would be surprised if any middle-aged adults or boomers would find this chaotic work funny. But my point is that he is a very young comedian and understands that most young people from ages 15 to 40 are into what he's all about. High energy, today's music, and drugs. On top of that, his unyielding energy levels help not only grab literally everyone's attention, but it also helps appease with most people's shorter attention spans today. From his stand-up acts all the way to his TV series, this energy is consistent, and he makes it his own style. His approach not only comes off as not caring what people think, but a great deal of charisma can be seen from all these performances given how true he stays to himself, either while performing or not. I feel like he'd just be a fun dude to hang out with, which is something I think he's always trying to go for. He's insanely random, he's incredibly loud, and he seems to be always down to party, and all these aspects are made crystal clear in his new special, Legalize Everything. To me, this is what a younger, modern comedian should be, but his jokes are also so in line with the current culture, and he's not afraid to speak his mind, which I'll get into. So, Jerry's special literally first opens with himself jumping out of a helicopter above New York City. He's then running while changing out of his wetsuit behind stage, all before we see the comedian walk on stage with a big band playing behind him, and if that's not stuck in the past, then I don't know what is. All I have to say here is, why? Where is the joke? I see nothing but spectacle here, and if you haven't guessed, it's just not funny. The production value with these short sketches where Jerry is playing a secret agent goes to show how much money this man has in his name. It makes me think that he could do literally anything he wants with all this money. Jerry, dressed in suit and tie, then nabs the mic and starts making fun of the crowd for making it out of the house and going out. Then he does a joke on going out, like, "Should we go out? They're going out, we could go out, let's go out, we need to get out." From there, it pretty much just stays at this bland, disingenuous level. Andre's opening is actually funny, in that it perfectly matches his comedic style, it stays in line with the title, and most importantly, he's doing something funny on screen. What a concept! But what's even more noteworthy about this drunk and drug-induced police officer bit is that the sketch feels and looks like an Eric on the Street segment from his show, and it works so well because of that. It's hyperactive, it involves him interacting with people on the street and making an absolute fool of himself. It's everything we'd like about Eric Andre. You can even see people on the street of New Orleans genuinely laugh and have fun with this character he's doing on the street, showing that people do indeed find Eric ridiculous and comedic. I mean, think about it. If you saw a man garbed in a police uniform acting drunk and offering you a bong rip on the street, would you find it bold or strange? You'd probably be so confused that you'd just laugh, even if you didn't know who Eric Andre even was. His comedy is very, very bold, and it pushes the limits, which translates perfectly into his set. In terms of the stage performance, for literally the entire set, Jerry remains relatively stiff on stage, walking around slowly in a systematic fashion, up and down the stage as he scans the audience in his neat suit and tie. It's just so damn plain and boring, and we've seen this again and again for decades. Jerry had stated on Mark Maron's What the Fuck podcast that he was doing this for the nostalgia and throwback of things. But is anyone really feeling nostalgic about the bygone era of old comedy? It's just boring and safe and blech. No one was really asking for this, but Jerry did it anyway for whatever reason. On the other hand, most comedians nowadays will go no further than wearing a t-shirt and maybe a sports blazer with some tennis shoes and pants. But Eric Andre takes this comfortability a tad further and wears a tight pink t-shirt, a pair of normal pants, and some colorful sneakers. On stage, he refrains from ever standing too still as he jumps around, screams, touches audience members, exposing his midriff multiple times, and sweats his ass off like an animal. He just doesn't care, and it's so much fun to watch. There are no rules that state a comedian has to wear a neat suit and tie for their act, but even if there were rules, rules are meant to be broken in the entertainment world. At least I think so. Okay, so I've talked a decent amount about each of these comedians' writing styles and content, but what makes these sets so different? Well, Jerry takes the safe route and keeps his special simple. Jerry's special included just a simple large stage, a big band that can be wheeled on and off stage but is seen for a very brief time, and just a large, boring blue background. It's an absolutely massive venue, because it's Jerry Seinfeld, and that's typically how they're done, but it's literally just Jerry talking in the same tone on stage and nothing else. Again, we've all seen this before. On top of that, when the camera pans around to the audience, I saw just a little too many old white people who probably have been dedicated fans to Jerry for decades. And to me, this just goes to show that his fans have aged, and I'm sure he doesn't have too many younger fans. But for Andre, no. Forget all that stuff what comedians already have been doing for a Netflix special. Forget the big open opera house, forget the walking around on stage telling jokes with no other substance. No, this is Eric Andre, so the set needs to feel like Eric Andre. Make it a decent sized venue and have the audience stand like they're at a concert. Involve physical props to improve authenticity. Get an audience member's naked parents to make out on stage during the set. And have a game of text message roulette with an LCD screen big enough for everyone to see Andre's text messages. You see, this is fun. Not only is this what a modern stand-up routine should look like, but all these extra elements showcase Andre's staple hyperactivity and help younger and older audience members engage the entire time, as there's a lot of surprises involved with some albeit strange detours.
Wow, all right, I think that's enough. I think we've all seen enough.
In some areas of the set, the comedy can be best described as shocking, much like his Adult Swim show, and I won't say anything more so you can all experience it for yourselves. All I'm gonna say is that you don't see anything like this in Jerry's incredibly boring set. I think it's pretty clear that I hate Jerry Seinfeld and probably always will, unless he can finally humble himself enough to break his mold, but I don't think that will be happening anytime soon, given how stubborn the comedian is in his own ways. With Andre's new special, it's clear that his eccentricity makes for an entertaining 50-minute performance, but on top of his crazy style, it's safe to say that he just doesn't care anymore with how far he pushes the line. But he's always been this way, given the nature of his content. I honestly felt like his routine was way shorter than 50 minutes, given how hard I was laughing and how I never wanted it to end. Jerry is old school comedy, and to be honest, for him to release a brand new Netflix special filled with jokes that literally sound like his seminal material, it just feels like a waste of time and money on his part. But hey, I think the man can afford it. The point is, Jerry used to be funny, and I'm being generous when I say funny. To me, observational comedy already had its heyday before comedy started to push the limits more and more. And if he wants to remain relevant, maybe he should either ditch his stand-up career or simply reinvent it, since he seems to be doing a decent job with his Netflix series, Comedians in Cars. His car show isn't anything amazing, but I want to see more of this Jerry, where he's seen talking passionately about comedy and hanging out with other comedians because that's the time he's ever relatively genuine or honest and therefore shines the most. And in terms of his comedy, to me it seems nothing more than a mechanical task that he'll just never quit doing, so long as he can keep getting his laughs and nothing more from his audience, since honestly he kinda wants nothing really to do with his audience. I mean, just look at how he interacts with people right here.
Most of the time.
Gosh, I love you so much.
Oh, thanks.
Can I give you a hug?
No, thanks.
Please?
No, thanks.
A little one.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Oh.
That was a nice moment.
I don't know who that was.
Yeah, it was Kesha.
Okay.
Eric Andre's comedy and so many other comics material is generally fueled by the chaos and darkness that surrounds our daily lives. And to bring the darkness into the light on stage in a wildly honest and comedic format is kind of a weird form of escapism for me. I can't wait to see what other specials Andre has in store, but until then, we'll always have his surreal late-night talk show spoof to enjoy on Adult Swim. Sure, great comedy unlike Jerry's ordinary and safe comedy may remind us of how much our world and country might suck, but to be able to ferociously laugh at it and have a good time for 50 minutes to an hour with an engaged audience has a catharsis to it, and we have to remember that we could all use a genuine laugh now and then, even if it's uncomfortable at times. We can either chuckle at a rich man worshipping Pop-Tarts on a massive stage, or participate in an unexpected FaceTime call from a dude that just really wants all drugs to be legalized. Take your pick. But for my money, it's clear that new comedy clearly works better than the old.
You're not funny, Jerry Seinfeld!
That's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and thank you to our patron Weston Kotecki and our producer AJ Ford. Be sure to check out our Patreon and our podcast in the links below. Leave a comment on what sort of comedy you guys enjoy and let me know what some of your favorite Netflix specials are. If you haven't seen either of these specials for whatever reason and still watched the video, I highly suggest checking out both Eric Andre's new special and even Jerry Seinfeld's new special, even though Jerry's is not that great in my opinion. And if you have seen these two specials, let me know in the comments how you think Jerry Seinfeld compares to Eric Andre. I'm really curious to see where I stand in line with other people's opinions. Remember to have some fun today and stay safe. See you guys.